What's going on, guys? Ben from FLX, and today we're here to assemble the Blade 2.0. Now, before we get started, I do want to recommend that you get this professionally assembled. However, if you are someone who wants to put it together yourself, follow along with this video and we'll get you riding. Once your bike box is open, you're going to want to go ahead and take out the accessories, and then if you got the touring package, you can also remove the fenders as well. With the smaller items out of your box now, we can go ahead and take the bike out. Now this is easier done with two people, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do it if you are by yourself. So what you're gonna need is a pair of scissors, needle nose clippers, something like that that can snip the zip ties off. And what you're gonna do is actually come in the box and go ahead and snip the front tire away so we can pull this out before we take the rest of the bike away. Now that I have the tire out, I'm going to go ahead and take these protective plastic spacers off. These are here just to keep your bike safe during shipping. One thing that you want to note is to make sure that these little washers are still on the bike when you pull these off. They fit pretty snugly in, but on occasion they do come off when you pull these spacers. So we're going to want to make sure that they're both on the front tire when we remove those. Everything is removed from the box except the bike now, so we're gonna go ahead and take it out. Again, this is easier done with two people, but it is possible to do it by yourself. One way to accomplish this is to actually lay the box on its side and slide it out. I'm gonna go ahead and just try and pick it out by myself. All right. So this is what you should have. Your Blade 2.0 fully packaged all around the forks, the frame, and the back end. Now, we're gonna go ahead and start taking this packaging off, but one thing I wanna mention before we do so is make sure you set it all to the side. Do not throw any of it out until the bike is fully assembled. This is good practice for bikes and any sort of packaging. We wanna make sure that you have everything you need and don't accidentally throw anything away. Before we begin snipping the zip ties off, one thing that I would like you to do, and that's good practice, is to use the plastic spacer that came on your front tire and go ahead and put it underneath the front forks, as well as keep the foam on the bottom. This is going to protect it from being scraped on the floor if you're assembling it in your garage like I am. As you snip these wires, you want to be very careful not to accidentally clip any cabling for a headlight or brake hoses. It's real important that you're meticulous when snipping this packaging off, because the last thing you want to do is clip one of these wires. With the packaging removed, we can now begin the assembly of your bike. As you can see here, I still have the front forks resting on the foam pad and the plastic. If you're doing this inside on the carpet, this step isn't as important. Or if you're lucky enough to have a bike standing in your garage and you have it hanging, you're doing all right too. But because I have this resting and I want to get it off the ground, the first thing I'm going to do is install the front wheel. We're going to begin by removing the front through axle. To do that, just turn it to the left counterclockwise, and it should come out like that. Then again, keeping our foam pad on the bottom. With the front axle removed, we can go ahead and take out these caliper spacers. Now, it's extremely important that once these are removed, we do not squeeze the front brake, as those calipers will close down and you will not be able to insert your rotor. So once these are out, do not touch the brakes. Now, if you're by yourself, the easiest way to put the front tire on is to actually straddle the bike as if you were going to ride it. Then, making sure that the rotor is on the same side as your caliper, we're actually going to lift the forks up and then drop it down onto the bike axle, making sure that that rotor fits nicely inside that caliper, just like this. Now, making sure that our tire is seated properly, we can go ahead and insert the through axle. This part may take some jiggling because it needs to be perfectly in line, so I'm going to go ahead and shake that tire a bit, and then you can feel it when it goes in. The first side, now we have to make sure it exits properly. Again, I'm lifting the tire, kind of giving it light jiggles. And as you can see now, we have about 1/4 inch of space here. We can actually then begin tightening it down with the clockwise motion. Once the axle has been screwed in all the way, we can go ahead and clamp it down. Now, it's important to note that when you actually clamp it, you want to use just enough force so that it leaves an imprint in the palm of your hand. If it closes too easily or you have to force it, we need to make some adjustments. Under no circumstances should you ever close your lever towards the bottom, front, or top. It needs to be closed backwards, parallel with the ground. Now, if you find that it's too easy or too hard to close your lever in this position, please stop right now. Click the link that's in the description or type in the URL that's flashing on your screen. The Maxell lever has a special procedure in order to get it to tighten properly. At this point in time, you're going to need to click that link to learn how to adjust this. However, if you find that your lever out of the box closes with enough pressure to leave a mark in your palm, but it's not too tight, then you can go ahead and proceed to the next step. If you've made it this far, then your front tire is on. The bulk of the work is now done. The reason I like to put the front tire on first, especially if you don't have a bike stand, is because with it secured, you can now put the kickstand out and rest your bike nice and easy, and we can go ahead and begin putting the handlebars on. Now, in your accessory box, you will find several tools, one of which being the Allen key. We're gonna go ahead and remove the stem cap so that we can put the handlebars on now. One thing I like to do is loosen them with the shorter side, and then once they're able to screw out easily, I go ahead and use the longer side of the Allen key to then take these bolts out. With the stem cap off, we can now put the handlebars in. I'm gonna go ahead and swing them up top here. Now, you know you've done this right if the shifter is on the right-hand side of the bike and you can read the Spank logo properly, nothing is upside down. Now we're gonna put the stem cap on, again making sure that the logo is oriented the correct way. To do that, just match the logo on the bars with the cap, and then with the extra bolts, I'm gonna go ahead and hand tighten all 4 bolts down before we begin securing them with the Allen key. If you opted for the touring package, it's now time to install the front headlight. Now, one thing to note before you put this on is that this bracket needs to be placed on the outside of the stem cap. So you're gonna go ahead and put the stem cap on, then you're gonna put this bracket on the bottom here, and finally the bottom 2 bolts will be secured on. That way you lock this bracket down nice and tight and you can move your light. Now, with the assembly complete on the front half of the bike, it's time to go ahead and put the LCD screen on. As you can see here, mine is in this foam packaging. I'm gonna go ahead and take it out. Again, this is why we want you to make sure, do not throw anything away until the bike is fully assembled. With your LCD removed from the packaging, we can now begin prepping it for the install onto the handlebars. Using the smallest Allen key that came in your accessory box, we're going to go ahead and first loosen these outside screws on the LCD. Now, we are not going to take them all the way out, but rather loosen them 2 to 3 turns so that this bracket can rotate. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. And then once that is done, we can fully remove these screws on the bottom bracket so that we can hook it onto the handlebar. Now, with the FLX logo facing towards the bike, we're going to put the wires out in front of the handlebar, and then we are going to open these clasps very gently and go ahead and hook it onto the bike. Now we want to be careful not to stretch these too far because they can break. But as you can see there, they will snap into place. Go ahead and do that on the other side as well. Before we tighten these side screws, we're going to want to go ahead and put the original screws back into these brackets. And again, we're going to tighten these, but not all the way. We want to secure them so that the bolts don't fall out, but we want to leave it loose enough so that we can still rotate this bracket and get it into position. Go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Now with the bracket bolts screwed in but not all the way tightened, we're then going to rotate our LCD display to the top position like so. This bracket right here should be about in line with the stem nuts right here. As you can see, the display still moves, which is fine. Once we have these in place, we're going to go ahead and then tighten these brackets further. Now you want these to be secure, but you don't want to over tighten. The point at which it's good is when it no longer rotates. Go ahead and do the same thing for the back side. Now that your brackets are secure and don't rotate, we can go ahead and then tighten these side bolts. Now again, we do not want to over tighten. We want to secure it just enough till we feel a little bit of tension and then go ahead and stop. Doing the other side as well. Again, you will have a little bit of play with your LCD, but as you can see, it will stay in place wherever you leave it, giving you the ability to adjust it to your viewing preference. Now that the LCD screen is secure, we're going to go ahead and mount the buttons. If you flip it over to the back side, you'll see that there is a bolt in the back, and using that same Allen key we've been using, I'm going to go ahead and remove it all the way so that we can then clamp the buttons to the left-hand side of the handlebars. Now the reason we put it here is because the shifter and everything else is located on the right. The plus button should be facing upwards, the minus towards the bike, and just like the LCD, we're gonna very carefully put it on the bottom edge like that. Then using that same bolt, we're gonna go ahead and screw it down again, being sure not to tighten it all the way. The reason we're doing this is because we want to be able to move it to make sure that it is in the correct position and comfortable for you when you're riding. So I like it right about here where I can reach the brakes and still hit my thumb on each button. So now that I know it's in the right spot, I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down the rest of the way, again being careful not to over tighten. The last thing to do when installing the LCD screen is actually connect it to the bike. Now, if you look on the right side of your blade, you'll see that there are either 2 or 3 wires. Remember, I'm demonstrating on the blade with the touring package, so you may have a light already secured to the stem of your bike. If you don't, however, you'll still see 2 wires. One is for the optional throttle, the other connects to the LCD. You'll know which one is the LCD because they will both be green and have the same number of pins. And if you look very carefully, there's a notch here in the female piece as well as the male piece. So we're gonna go ahead and line up these arrows on the side and then secure the LCD into place. We wanna make sure this connection is fully seated, otherwise the bike won't power on. If you do have these extra throttle, or if you have the extra throttle cable, you can go ahead and tuck that nicely into your bike right here to keep it out of the way. Now we're going to insert the suspension seat post in your bike. Now, good practice is to get some just standard bike grease and go ahead and lube up the inside as well as the outside of your seat post. The reason being is that if you constantly adjust this, there may be some wear and tear on the seat post itself. Now, this won't do anything to affect it structurally. It's more of an aesthetic thing just to keep it nice and clean. So we're gonna go ahead and open this clamp after we've greased. I've already gone ahead and done that. We're going to slide our seat post in. Now, one thing to note, this has a minimum insertion length of 3 inches, which means you need to put this seat post in at least 3 inches for it to be secure so that you can ride safely. Once you get it into a position you like with the seat facing perfectly forward, you can go ahead and clamp this down. Now the same rule applies for this clamp. you want to use enough force where you feel it enough to close it, but it shouldn't be too easy either. Again, we don't want to over tighten or under tighten this. It should be enough to where the seat will no longer rotate or go down, but not so tight that you have to yank it shut. One of the last steps to complete the assembly of your Blade 2.0 is to install the pedals. Now I went ahead and grabbed the pedal box. I'm going to go ahead and remove one of them. And then when you're doing this at home, it's very important that you look at the pedal itself, because there is a left and a right pedal. It matters what size it's on. In the top right hand corner, there will be an R or an L for right or left side of the bike. This one has an L on it, so if I pretend like I'm riding, it's gonna go on the left side. I'm going to take the left side pedal and attach it to the crank arm right here. Now, the left side is a little bit different because it is cross-threaded here, which means it actually secures lefty-tighty in a counterclockwise motion, unlike most screws and bolts you use, which secure in a righty-tighty clockwise fashion. So as you can see here, I'm turning it to the left to get it tighter. And the reason behind this is when you pedal, you want it to be constantly tightening. So once it's hand tightened as far as it can go, I put the crank arm in a vertical position so that I can take the largest Allen key, put it in the backside, and go ahead and tighten the pedal down the rest of the way until it's secure. Again, you want to use a little force, but you should never be putting your full strength into tightening this. Now that that's done, we'll go ahead and flip it over and go to the other side of the bike. Now I'm on the right side of the bike, the side with the belt and the right pedal. This one is going to secure, like most things, righty-tighty in a clockwise fashion. We're going to go ahead and hand tighten it just like we did with the other pedal. Once we get in a position where we can no longer hand tighten, again, we are going to take that Allen key, put it on the back side, and secure it the rest of the way. Again, being sure not to over tighten, but making sure that it is secure. One quick thing I did want to mention is that your Roloff speed hub on the back does come pre-oiled. However, if you do live in a colder climate, one that does get below freezing, Roloff actually makes a cold weather oil that you're going to want to put into your speed hub so that you don't have gears locking up or seizing when it does reach those freezing temperatures. If you feel like you fall into this category, no worries. We do have that all-weather oil available on our website. Just visit flx.bike and you can pick some up there. So that's it, guys. That is the assembly procedure for the Blade 2.0. The last thing you want to do before riding is making sure that the battery is charged fully to 100%. You can do this by putting your charger in right here, plugs in just like your cell phone, or if you want, you can remove the keys from the front of your bike here, remove the battery itself, take it inside to charge it separate from the bike. Either way, you definitely want to make sure it's full before your first ride. That's it, guys. That's everything for the Blade 2.0. If you do have any questions, be sure to shoot us an email at support@flx.bike. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the trails.